You become a father, you say to yourself that you're not going to repeat the mistakes of the past. No, that's what I did. I said, when I become a father and a man, that I won't repeat those mistakes, the mistakes that the people that came before me made, that showed that living life for life without a bottle in your hand was the way to live. But as I got older and as I grew, and I became that role model, because like when my childhood, the men that I looked up to drank every day. The men that I looked up to were alcoholics. And I know in a lot of ways that I said that, that's not the role model that I wanted to be. But the reality was that I actually was that role model I modeled alcoholic behavior. So I continued the dreaded curse, and they say, well, he's alcoholic. Alcoholism, genetic, or is it learnt? There's lots of different things that we could argue that whether or not it's genetic or not, but I guess we do what we see. And if you see somebody healing their pain, their trauma, and their things in their lives with alcohol, you think, well, shit, well, it must be all right if the men in my life are doing it. I mean, it's probably a good idea that I do it when I have feelings that I can't deal with. Other people deal with it with, other substances or other ways. But really, the only way to deal with any problem is to deal with the problem head on. And if you can't directly deal with it, you need to deal with yourself. You need to start to put things in place that you can weather the storm of the challenges that you have. It's not about running to the bottle to hide. It's not about trying to avoid problems, because ultimately in life we're all going to get served problems on a daily basis. It's more about us having the ability not only to withstand the problems, but to grow with the problems. And as we grow, our problems will grow. So trying to avoid problems by not dealing with them with alcohol is not a good way to probably live life. And it's really important that we show our kids, show the younger people that you don't run from your problems. Real men don't run from their problems, because they're not dealing with the problems. Every time that you have a problem, you run and fucking hide, you're going to get more problems. And there's no way to outrun your problems, because they just multiply. And with alcohol, especially with alcohol, if you don't deal with your problems, alcohol will give you more problems. And then you'll have twice as many problems to deal with than you had in the first place. And then on top of that, everything will start to become harder and harder, because you're a slave to the bottle. You're a slave to needing that fix in your life. You're a slave to that low grade gnawing in the back of your mind that constantly needs its fill. It's always there, needing to be dealt with. And that's the thing with alcohol. And that's why it's so insidious that it takes over your whole life, because when you're not drinking, you're thinking about drinking, and when you're not thinking about drinking, you're drinking, and you're planning on your drinking, and you're scheming, and you're hiding, and it just becomes so tiring to always be having to consider your drinking or your life around the drinking. And I say life, and I use the word liberally, because you're not really living if you're drinking. And I'm talking about if you're drinking alcoholically, of course. If you have one or two drinks every now and again, that's cool. And I'm not here to say that alcohol, is evil and it's, the curse of the world. But if you're using alcohol to escape your problems, if you're using alcohol so that you don't deal with your problems, that you deal with your stress through alcohol, it's not using the tools that you can use in an effective way. Because there's no difference between somebody who's using alcohol and somebody that's on the street shooting up, random things. There's no difference. The only difference is the drug. And there's been studies to say that alcohol is one of the top 3 drugs, in terms of problems, in terms of not only like long-term impacts of people's lives, but the social problems, the health problems, the implications, and all these things. And not only that, when you drink, you're taken out of your life. And you can't be the father and the leader that you want to be. And it's about your life becoming your legacy. It's about you being able to create the life that you want. And I know when my dad was around, he stopped drinking and he became a role model to show that it was possible to not drink. But at the time, it was a bit of a joke. And I look at it now and I think, I think that even though at the time he never saw me sober, the fact that he got sober probably helped in some ways to say that it was okay. Because if you see people that have gone through that journey, if you see people that have been successful in sobriety, then you can say, well, it's possible. And that's one of the things that you need to sort of believe when you're getting sober, really, is to believe that it's possible. Because I know for a long time in my life, in my drinking career, I drank for 20 plus years. I never believed for a minute that I could go one day without stopping drinking, let alone 1 year. And to think, the years have gone by and, alcohol doesn't have a hold of me like it did. But it could quite easily if I just picked it up and went with it again. And the thought and the ingrained pattern never really goes away. Because even now you think, I've got a problem. Even now, years later, I think, I'll just get drunk. But that doesn't mean I have to get drunk. That doesn't mean that, that's what I do. But sometimes the thought's there. Because you just get used to not dealing with the problems. But now, a more effective way is to just start to try and be calm. Try and really assess what you can control in the problem. Start to do things to alleviate the problem. And then take some action, direct action against the problem so that the problem can be corrected. And if it can't be corrected, just accept that there's a problem. Sometimes just accepting is just enough. And that's what it's all about. It's about acceptance, about being willing to change the problems and just dealing with the shit that happens on a daily basis, and just know that no matter what, you're not going to drink. Even if your ass is on fire, you're not going to drink, and you just keep going. And like I said, the role models that I had, when I was younger, everyone drank. And then as I got older and, my dad got sober because he had a problem with alcohol too. But he recognized in the later years that the price that he was paying for his alcohol addiction wasn't worth paying the price anymore. He didn't want to pay. So he put down the bottle. And I never really had a discussion with him about it. And I never really, I only know, from what I saw and what I remember, that, that they said to him that you will lose your leg if you keep drinking because of his health. And he thought, well, fuck, I don't want to lose my leg. And the same thing, and So he stopped, and that was it. And that's what it's all about. It's about, it's about finding something greater, finding a reason why you want to stop. That could be your kids, that could be your family, that could be your legacy. For me, it was just, I didn't want to lose my family, I didn't want to lose myself. And I didn't know how I was going to stop. And I didn't know how I was going to continue to stay stopped. I just knew I had to. And I did the daily actions, and I just believed that things would get better. And did they get better straight away? Probably not. They got harder. The problems that you have aren't going to go away. The things that you have done aren't going to go away. The people that you've hurt are still going to be hurt. The things that you have said are still going to be said. Apologies need to be made, and I guess the price has to be paid. But what's the alternative? The alternative is to live a miserable existence in your drowning in your misery, in the bottle. And it's a really easy trap to fall into, because you think about it, people that are sleeping on the street in the gutter they don't wake up one day and go, oh fuck, it'd be a really good idea if I just slept in the gutter, and then go and live that life of a homeless person. Because it's a gradual slipping of your standards, slipping of the things you believe, and slipping of your willingness to accept things in your life that you wouldn't accept initially. And as your standards and your abilities to accept things slip away, I guess your life starts to slip away, and then eventually all you're left with is the bottle. And it doesn't matter what drug you use, eventually all you're left with, you and your drug. And you see it over and over and over again, and people can't see. The thing is, people can't see when they start that this is where they're going to end up, because they believe that they can outsmart it. You believe that because you have a job that you're smarter than that. You believe that you're a functional man, that you can outsmart your addiction. But you can't, because eventually it catches up with you, and it doesn't matter how smart you think you are. Alcohol just sits and waits, quietly waiting for you to fucking give it what it wants, and that's your everything. And then when it's taken everything from you, it'll take the last thing that you have left, and that's your life. And I'm not saying this to be melodramatic. I've seen it over and over and over again. It takes everything from people. Not everyone will wake up to the fact that alcohol's not good. Not everyone gets a chance to start their life again. Not everyone gets to wake up and say, I used to drink every day, but now I don't. And if you hear that and you think, oh fuck, that's scary, don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of than because it's just reality. It's just, you wake up and you're in reality. Because the reality that we live in when we're drinking is not reality. It's fucking insanity. You see people online sitting there drinking over and over again, night after night, day after day, to feel something, to feel better in their misery, in their cycle of fucking misery, repeating the same thing over and over and over again, hoping for a better result. But if you're doing something that is not bringing you joy, that is not bringing you happiness, it's bringing you a temporary feeling of okay, it's probably time to do something different. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's not bringing you joy, and you do it over and over and over again, and you just fucking hope for something better, you need to do something better. And that's the thing with alcohol. We just chase that initial feeling of okay. That initial feeling of, oh, okay, Then we keep chasing that. Oh, I just need that feeling. But the feeling never comes back after the first drink. After the first drink of the day. That relief, that everything's okay for now. Then we wake up the next day and everything's not okay. And then the cycle begins. So if you're sick of chasing that cycle of, chasing the cycle of trying to feel okay, put down the bottle. And if you're unsure of how to actually do that, if you're unsure of the steps, reach out. Click a link below. I'd love to help you, get started on the journey. But that being said, you've got to recognize that there's something out there, that sobriety is possible. Just believe that you can be sober. Just believe that, even if it's a little belief, start to believe that sobriety is possible. And the more that you believe, the more that you see other people, the more that you know that people do get sober and do live sober, you'll start to see that there's life in sobriety. And as you go through life and as you get further away from alcohol, you'll realize that the small world that you created, the small world of alcohol, is actually a small world that you created. And it's a world, an illusion, that it's not a world at all. It's a cage. And when you set yourself free from that cage, anything's possible. Anything. You can be great. You can be the man that you want to be. You can be the leader. You can be the person that you already are. But you can be the full version of yourself. So stop trying to run away and stop trying to hide. Stand up. Say no fucking more. Today I rise. Step into your power and choose to do something for yourself that doesn't involve getting pissed. Choose to get sober. Click the link below. See what Kick the Piss is all about. And perhaps we'll have a call, we'll have a chat, see how I can help you get sober. But even if I can't help you get sober, please consider getting sober today. For yourself, for your family, and for your future. Because you're not going to regret not having a drink, but you might regret actually having it. And just remember, you can be sober today if you kickthepiss.com.